Did Carmelo Anthony just reveal that the NBA draft lottery is rigged? Well, if you watch the previews that Showtime just released for the Up in Smoke podcast starring Carmelo Anthony, you will hear him tell an interesting story. You see, he was asked how he felt about being passed over by the Detroit Pistons in the 2003 NBA draft for Darko Milicic. And he goes into detail about certain events leading up to the draft. Now, this story might go over a lot of people's head, but it ain't go over mine. So if you're new to the channel, hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave a comment. Let's talk about it. So let's kick things off with how Carmelo Anthony came about being on the Detroit Pistons radar in the first place. You see, to understand this, you would have to go back to 1997. A three-way deal was put in place with the then Vancouver Grizzlies, where Otis Thorpe was sent from Detroit to Vancouver for a future first-round pick. Now, this first-round pick was a 2003 pick, and it was protected only if Vancouver lands the number 1 overall pick. So anything from 2 to 13, Detroit gets. And in the 2002-2003 season, Vancouver finished 6th to last place in the standings. So why was Carmelo Anthony even on Detroit's radar if at the time they might be looking at 6 at best? Now, I understand that LeBron James was going to be taking number 1. And for most people, Carmelo Anthony was the consensus number 2 overall pick. I mean, he's coming off of a national championship at Syracuse. He was highly touted coming out of Oak Hill Academy. In most people's eyes, he was the second best player in that draft. But again, we're talking about the events leading up to the draft. And Carmelo tells an interesting story about him driving from Baltimore to Philadelphia to catch a Pistons Sixers game. Now, the latest he could have caught a Pistons Sixers game that year was May 16th, 2003. It's the second round of the playoffs, and the Sixers tied the series up 2-2. And their head coach is Larry Brown. Now, I'm going to play this clip, and you will hear Carmelo Anthony make an interesting statement about his conversation with Larry Brown.
I still think about that shit though to this day, bro. I'm like,
because I want to say, didn't we have Rip on the show, and Rip swore you was coming too?
Yep. I'm telling you, man. We drove from B-More to Philly. Me and my man Bay, we drove from B-More to Philly, man, to go watch. It was Detroit versus Philly, and Larry Brown had already took the job at Detroit, but he was still coaching Philly. So we're in the back, and he's like, "Yo, we taking you, like we taking you." So I'm driving back up 95, like, yo, we going to Detroit. The whole hood is we Detroit.
Detroit.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like that shit still sit with me to this day.
Now, why would Larry Brown, then the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, be positioning himself to be the coach of the Detroit Pistons in the middle of a playoff series, where it's tied 2-2 and it's any man's game at that point? And how would Larry Brown know, as the Sixers head coach, that the Detroit Pistons will be in position to draft Carmelo Anthony number 2 overall? Because again, no one can foresee on May 16th that the Vancouver Grizzlies would jump 4 spaces in the NBA lottery to be in position to draft Carmelo Anthony. Because the lottery is held on May 22nd. And the last time Philadelphia and Detroit played in Philadelphia that year was on May 16th. So that means at the current position that they were in at the time, with Vancouver possibly picking at number 6, 5 teams would have had to pass on Carmelo Anthony in order for Detroit to even be a player in the Carmelo Anthony sweepstakes. And it's interesting that he mentioned that Larry Brown had already taken a job in Detroit, you see, because Detroit made it to the Eastern Conference Finals that year where they lost to the New Jersey Nets. And Rick Carlisle was a pretty good head coach. As we know, he went on to win a championship in Dallas. But how did Detroit and Larry Brown basically cut a sidebar deal for him to become the Pistons head coach while they're in the middle of a playoff series where they're tied 2-2? Again, it's any man's game at that point. How did they cut a sidebar deal? And how does Carmelo Anthony already know this before the NBA lottery? Now, 2003 was a long time ago. And maybe, just maybe, Carmelo Anthony is over-exaggerating the story a bit. But you got to understand, that was some of the most important times of his life. I mean, his future was going to change for the better from that moment on. So I'm pretty sure he remembered certain details. And to think that before the NBA draft, he states that Detroit was basically telling him that he was their guy. He was their guy. Because again, we're not talking about the fact that he was passed up by Darko Milicic. We're talking about the fact that Detroit from the very beginning knew that they were going to be in position to not only draft him, but that Larry Brown was going to be their coach during the playoffs. And ironically, the Detroit Pistons did draft Darko Milicic over Carmelo Anthony, but it pretty much didn't hurt their chances the next year because they actually won the NBA championship in the 2003-2004 season. So, I don't know. Did the Detroit Pistons do some favors for the powers that be? Let me know in the comment section. This is a very interesting theory and it's very fishy. But I could be tripping. Or Carmelo Anthony could be lying. I don't know. But let me know what you think in the comment section. Until then, I'm out of here.